Yeah, well, thanks for being here with us, Zach, and I hope other folks will be able to catch up with us later in the recording. Um, I'll just jump right into the slideshow here, and if someone joins in late, they can just ride the wave here with us. So on this first slide, it is showing up right there. Yeah, just start off a little bit of orientation on PRTPO and the kind of work we do, and highlight some of the near-term concerns we're working on. John Clausen is going to help shed light on the major concern we have going into 2025, which I hate to give the plot away, but that's inadequate funding for basic RTPO work. And then Gary Abrams is going to bat clean up here and reflect briefly on why the statewide issues matter so much to us in the Peninsula region. And we'll turn it over to you for your thoughts, hopefully, and what you see on the horizon for this session, and any ideas on partnership opportunities to advance our common concerns in the open discussion with the group. And get acclimated with the issue, we'll do some regional highlights first. So slide two. PRTPO is the only venue for this kind of intergovernmental collaboration in the four-county region. So it's not just for transportation, but this is the only time we get together. All these agencies get together for any kind of government service. So from my mind, that's a big bang for the buck to get all these folks in the room at the same time. There's 27 representatives from tribes, cities, counties, transit agencies, port districts, WashDOT, Olympic region. They've been working together for 30 years to coordinate transportation policies and investments. In 2019, the PRTPO reconfigured its structure to be independent from WashDOT, Olympic region, and engage policymakers more directly in defining and carrying out regional activities. And we've discussed this among ourselves and find great value in this regional cooperation. We're proud of what we've been able to do with a small budget and what we've been able to accomplish together over the last 5 years. Slide three. Um, we don't have much discretion in our work, but when we do, we try to address issues or needs that are shared by our members. For example, we expanded training for local staff or local agency staff in managing federally funded projects and successfully advocated with other partners for defederalizing small local projects. So thank you and your support for the federal funding SWAP program. We're hopeful this program will soon be made more permanent. I think this really goes a long ways towards building regional resilience. We convened a wide array of regional stakeholders working on electrification and zero emission vehicles, hosting webinars with subject matter experts, and creating new opportunities for networking. This led to a successful multi-million-dollar grant involving public, private, tribal, nonprofit partners that will construct DC fast charger stations all the way around the Olympic Peninsula, which is greatly needed, given our remoteness. Another outcome of our EV coordination is that three of our tribes, Squaxin Island, Skokomish, and Jamestown Sklallam, are working with Wazoo to develop transportation electrification plans that will not only guide their future EV investments, but also serve as models for the other 7 tribes in our region and hopefully elsewhere. We're establishing a regional data and mapping portal to support our members without the resources in-house to obtain key information for grants and reports. And, given the amount of small communities we have that can't replicate this work, that's very important. And next slide. So every year we develop our transportation outlook folio to give our legislative delegation apprised, keep you all apprised of what's on our regional radar. This increases opportunities for partnerships and collaboration in moving these matters forward. As legislators, you are ex officio members of PRTPO, and we want to keep you informed. This year's topics reflect the wide range of issues we are contemplating, starting with our own ability to engage in regional planning. Our priority concern is funding for core regional planning activities. The state RTPO funding is inadequate for maintaining compliance with our responsibilities, though. So John will be talking about this in more detail, but the legislature is appropriating about as much for our TPOs today as it did 20 years ago in 2004. So basically our budget is declining in real terms. biennium to biennium. The state demands are going up or increasing, and the fixed cost of doing business, of course, is always growing. Instead of talking about what priority endeavors we might pursue in our next biennium work program, we'll be talking about what we're cutting, and that's always a bummer. And we can't afford that right now with the amount of projects we got going out there. Next slide. There are other important topics on our radar. We're calling attention to three of them here this year. The operational reliability of the state ferry system. The marine highway system is a foundation of regional mobility in the Peninsula region, and we support the efforts of new director Steve Nevy to address issues plaguing the state ferry system. And we want to acknowledge the role of Kitsap Transit is playing, of course, to backfill some of that service the state is unable to meet. And the second thing is the allocation of state toll credits to offset local match for the operating grants and sustaining the Dungeness line. So legislative direction to allocate the toll credits is needed this session to ensure we don't lose this vital service connecting Port Angeles with medical facilities in Seattle and the SeaTac Airport, and of course all the communities in between at the end of 2025. And then finally, the Coast Guard policies governing the Hood Canal bridge openings for especially large sailboats need to be revisited. Common sense policies can better balance the needs of pleasure craft with the traffic and economic impacts incurred by the communities from Bremerton to Port Angeles and again all the other communities up here beyond the bridge. We invite you to join with us as we begin moving this matter forward. Next slide. This is the last slide here. A large piece of intergovernmental collaboration is quite simply communication. I can't emphasize enough how much that's made a difference for us here. I'm just hearing from everybody on the peninsula. We always want to highlight projects our members are moving forward with. You will find a selection of projects that members identify as noteworthy this year. And I'll turn it over to John Clausen here, Kitsap Transit, to give you some deeper insights as to the funding issues PRTPO and every other RTPO faces.
Thank you, Ben, and Zach, thank you for being here. I guess you're representing the legislature here today, so
yeah,
you have a lot on your shoulders. So thank you, and certainly our thanks go to Representative Simmons for being here. One thing I would like to point out very quickly, Zach, is not only the importance of this organization, but also the level of participation. And I think you can just see that by who's here today joining this discussion. There's 25 members that are here, that are 24 that represent cities, counties, tribes, ports, transits, pretty much all of us that are in this region. So you can see the level of participation and importance of it. The one thing has been mentioned, and one of our major issues that we have with the PRTPO, and it's not just the PRTPO, but it's essentially all of the RTPOs throughout the state. Funding is inadequate to complete the work that needs to be done, what we're required to do, and just what we should be doing. It's especially acute here in the PRTPO with the rural regions that we have. We don't get the federal fundings that a lot of the large urban areas like PSRC and those folks receive to support their operation. It's pretty much dependent upon the state funding that we get. And as Ben mentioned, it really hasn't changed. In fact, because of the lack of change, it's actually going down, because certainly the cost of operating any organization continues to increase year after year. So for us to be able to meet all of these requirements that we have, essentially it's just not enough. So right now, the state is allocating about 4.9 million statewide per biennium to support the 17 RTPOs that are throughout the state. And again, that really hasn't changed since 2024. We conduct all of our work with less than $274,000 a biennium. That's here at the PRTP, and that's just over $136,000 a year. So That amount has declined over the last 3 budget cycles. This covers all of our fixed expenses of being an RTPO, our liability insurance, membership fees with different organizations that we need to be a part of, software licenses, accounting software, state audits, the legal expenses, any of our cost recoveries and public notices that we want to make sure that our communities are involved in everything that we do and more. So you can imagine what the requirements are. And essentially what's left over is basically covering our staff. And our staff at this point is essentially zero point 0.4 of an FTE. We are accepting responsibilities of the general operation, if you will, between Kitsap Transit and Jefferson Transit, who is our financial or fiscal agent. But we're not set up to be able to afford or fund this PRTPO activity. So we really need to look at the state for their help. And again, uh, our fixed costs don't stay flat like the budget has. As you can imagine, they continue to increase. And without the PRTPO staff, we as members really can't do much. If you look at just some of the basic things that we do in trying to organize these meetings, just to the very basic level of agenda productions and notices and things of that nature, it's really, really hard. The RTPOs need at least one FTE to comply with all the basic requirements of RCW 4780 that the legislature has developed and respond to the requests we get from WSDOT, other state agencies, association, and others for the regional data and input. We'd like to be in a position to respond to requests and participate in those processes, but we don't have the resources to do it. That's why we're working with the other RTPOs throughout the state to support a minimum of 11.7 million per biennium for the regional transportation planning effort statewide. And this will ensure that every RTPO receives a minimum of about 400,000 per biennium, and that we believe is enough to fund a position to support the RTPOs. And now, again, that's across the state. That's not just here at the PRTPO. But we're not alone in making difficult choices between the bureaucratic procedures, planning activities, and that have value for the region and the communities our members serve. That's why we're working with the other RTPOs across the state to advocate this request. And since it will benefit every community in the state of Washington, and certainly, again, because of the membership you can see here, we pride ourselves in doing a lot with a little, but we're just about to run out of capacity. We're faced with a situation that we have a consultant there. Black does a wonderful job of helping us, but her contract's coming to an end, and we have to go back out to bid for that service. And I can't imagine that we're going to find somebody. There is talking about retirement and a well-earned retirement if she goes that direction, but finding someone that can do what she's done for us for the same price, I'm not holding my breath. I can tell you that. So, we're facing continued increases in the costs. And that's one of the challenges that we're facing, not only at the PRTPO, but also just all of the RTPOs throughout the state. So Representative Simmons support in this area, and we're going to be talking with others throughout the state on this same request, because again, it's not just us. So thank you again, Zach, and I'd like to turn it over to Gary so he can share some additional information.
Not sure if Gary's here.
Oh,
Gary, you're lurking somewhere. If not, I can go over the part we worked this out in advance, what we were going to say, so I can read his part if that sounds okay. Important words, I think. Gary, if you jump on, just start interrupting me. All right, so to appreciate why adequate base funding matters, here are some things that we've worked out. We are having to cut because we can't fully staff our work program. We're challenged to respond in timely ways to requests for data and policymaker input that WashDOT, FMSIB, and other state agencies regularly request about funding priorities and policy concerns. And this undermines opportunities for our local concerns to compete with those in other regions, other urban regions especially. PRTPO is unable to participate on project study teams like the Gorst Interchange Project or Mason County's SR3 Freight Corridor Project, meaning that the regional transportation perspective is missing from the regionally significant project coordination team. And the PRTPO cannot develop regional data and other resources our members want to reference for comprehensive plans, grant applications, and other uses. Our smallest members often don't have resources in-house to develop or track down this information, like I was saying earlier. Obligatory compliance requirements consume scarce resources that limit staffing for board-directed activities tailored to the concerns of this region. And PRTPO finally or cannot participate with local agencies, tribes, and Olympic region in their various coordinated planning efforts, again, leaving their regional perspective out of the local and state processes. It's just the opposite of what legislators envisioned when they created the RTPOs in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be lost if RTPOs went away? That's the question here. That is the inevitable outcome if RTPO revenues continue to stay flat or even decline while responsibilities and costs increase. If PRTPO went away, the Peninsula region would lose a valuable forum for local, state, and tribal transportation partners to collaborate and coordinate with each other and build strong relationships. This is true for elected officials as well as for staff. Regional transportation concerns are bigger than any one of us, and the RTPO table is the only place we all come together to take stock of an increasingly uncertain future. And we organize and strategize around priority regional concerns and cooperate to move the needle on the most pressing concerns. That's why an increase in base funding to maintain existing RTPO operations is good for the state. We think an increase from 4.9 million to 11.7 million is a modest cost. This is biennium. Modest cost given that it benefits hundreds of cities and counties, every transit system, and every WashDOT region in the state. And and I would say like my real job is as a winemaker, and I work with moving liquids all the time, and I think a lot about pumps and keeping that pump primed is really important here for getting this communication going, getting everybody to the table here. If all members are at the table, it's more effective. And I think when we're doing more stuff, all members are more likely to be at the table. So kind of catch 22 there, but it requires funding. So that's our update to you about 2024, and we'd like to turn it over to you to hear your insights if you're feeling up for that, Zach, for the 2025 session, as well as any questions you might have about the concerns we shared, our work, or anything else you might have. No
Can't
pressure.
say that I have too much to add, unfortunately. My boss is no longer on appropriations. I
Okay.
do believe that Nance is on transfer. I'm assuming that this
Right.
budget would go through that. I'm sure Commissioner Rolfes could probably add more. She knows so much more than I do.
I appreciate you being here.
Zach, if I may, I'd like to just give you one quick example of the obligations or requirements that we face. Not long ago, we had an opportunity to receive a small amount of federal dollars to develop some planning efforts. And of course, the PRTPO isn't a direct recipient, but Kitsap Transit is. We deal with millions of dollars annually of federal dollars, comply with all of the regulations. And in the last two triennial reviews we've had with FTA, we've completed with 0 findings or comments. And yet, because the funding we accepted the money through Kitsap Transit and administered through the planning effort. But because our Title VI plan that's been approved by FTA does not cover all of the counties, DOT is obligating us to develop our own PRTPO Title VI plan and to do an adequate job in developing it. It's not something that you just check the boxes. You have to really go through and make sure you're looking at all aspects. That's an expensive obligation for a relatively few amount of dollars. And this goes back to the supporting, don't federalize any of the funding that comes to the PRTPOs or the RTPOs, because there's a lot of strings that come with federal dollars, as I'm sure you're aware of. So now we're faced with coming up with a consultant that we use at Kitsap Transit to update our Title VI plan to develop a plan for the PRTPO. And I'm working with DOT to hopefully get some additional funding to pay for that. But that's an example of some of the obligations that the PRTPO in particular are faced with. And we've got to figure out with this limited budget we have, how do we meet those requirements? So yeah, it's just kind of a recent real life example that I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
And I'm seeing a face I didn't expect to see on this call. Lindsay Schroman Warren, you're far, far away. Are you able to hear and talk?
I am. Thanks for
Is it?
facilitating because I'm on vacation in Ecuador and I wasn't sure if my internet connection would work. Hi, Zach. I'm the current chair of PRTPO and I don't know what Ben's calling on me for.
Oh, I don't know. In case you wanted to add anything there.
I mean, we've
Enjoy your
frankly,
vacation.
we've had conversations about, well, what would it mean to wrap up the PRTPO? Like, if we can't sustain it, then we need to responsibly land it and mothball it. And that, from my experience now on city council, on Clallam Transit, on PRTPO for 7 to 5 years on each, we'd lose so much in coordination and planning at a time when the state is looking at transportation as a major emission source, as a key equity driver, and we should be doing regional planning to make sure that works well, and yet we're just not at capacity. So one of the things that we hope to do this session, obviously, is work with the legislature to make this funding available. And this is the first time, to my knowledge, we've asked for anything for the RTPO directly. Usually we're asking for our regional transportation improvements.
Well, anybody else want to add anything else while we're in this part of the session? We haven't actually gone to our official meeting and done the roll call yet, so that would be next. But what do you think, Thera? Oh, Marty Allen's here. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I just wanted to let Zach know that all these members, all us members here that are in the PRTPO, we on our own time we do try to help with different things that I know a lot of us have done, like reviewing projects and rating them and things like that. It takes time off of our regular jobs, but we all try to pitch in and help. And I've seen so much good things come out of the PRTPO since I've joined like 10 years ago. I think it's been since I started this job here at the tribe. I just wanted to tell Zach that it's a really good organization, and it's nice to be able to collaborate with everybody. All the transits collaborate together, and we've seen a lot of changes over the years where you can jump on a bus and go all the way around the peninsula, go to Seattle or anywhere you want, and things like that. And it's just great, the collaboration that we have between all the different tribes and cities and ports and everything. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, we have so few ways in and out of our area, and each one of them is vulnerable, either by topography or just ferry schedules and whatnot. Yeah, what do we want to do next here? I just want to make sure I don't want to get us into any topics before we've made sure we had a quorum here. Because that's a little unknown to me, unless you've been working on that in the background, Thera.
Ben, I would think that if we did the roll call or introductions, that might have benefit, Zach, just so
Oh
that
yeah.
it's
Yeah,
an
that's a good
idea
point.
of who's all here.
All right, we'll skip Lindsay's normally, unless Lindsay, do you want to lead from here or do you want to stay on vacation?
No, my connection could freeze
Yeah,
and it doesn't make
great.
sense for me to be facilitating. Thanks, though.
Thanks for popping in. So I'm going to skip, Lindsay usually has a great question to familiarize everybody with that, but I think for Zach's sake, we'll do our who we really are and what we're representing here. Ben Thomas, City of Fort Townsend City Council. I see Marty next. I'll just go on my screen here, if that's all right. Marty, you're next. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Marty Allen, and I work for the Skokomish Indian Tribe as a transportation planner.
Great. John?
Yes, Jack. John Clausen, I'm the executive director here at Kitsap Transit.
Brenda?
I'm Brenda Fantroy Johnson, and I'm on the Bainbridge Island City Council.
And you may know Thera Black from when you logged in here, but you want to say something?
Hi, Thera Black, PRTPO coordinator, and the one who keeps bugging you with emails, Zach.
All right, then I see Catherine next. Catherine Frazier.
Morning, Catherine Frazier. I'm the Grants and Contracts Manager here at the Port of Port Angeles.
Great. And then Rob. Port Orchard there. Some people may have stepped away because of the presentation, but I just met him earlier today. And then I see Zach there, of course. And then Christine.
Christine Rolfes, Kitsap County Commissioner.
Lindsay is on my screen, pretty much.
Lindsay Sherman Warren, Port Angeles City Council member.
And got Mike French there.
Mike French, Clallam County Commissioner.
Great. Rachel Anderson.
Hi there, Deputy Mayor of the City of Squim.
And Amy Asher.
Hello, Amy Asher, General Manager of Mason Transit.
Jim Fetzer.
Good morning, Jim Fetzer, Clallam Transit General Manager.
And Edward Caviello.
Yeah, Ed Coviello, PRTPO staff.
Dick Taylor.
Good morning, Dick Taylor, Port of Shelton Commissioner.
Wendy Clark Getson.
Hello, I'm Wendy Clark Getson from Jamestown Sklallam Tribe. I'm the Transportation Manager.
Great. Loretta.
Morning, Loretta Swanson, Public Works Director for Mason County.
Great. Miranda.
Good morning, I'm Miranda Nash, Jefferson Transit Finance Manager and PRTPO Fiscal Agent.
David Forte.
Hi, David Fort, Kitsap County Public Works.
Fort, sorry. adding syllables to your name. We got a member from the public, I think John Worthington. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, but you may well. Otherwise I see Arnie Baker. Oh, go ahead, John, sorry.
John Worthington, Squim. I'm here.
And then Arnie Baker.
Good morning, Arne Bacher. I'm the Port of Bremerton COO.
Great. And Paul.
Yeah, I apologize if you called me on me earlier. I had to step away. I'm Paul Dusich. I'm the Public Works Director here at the City of Squim.
George Blush.
Morning, I'm George Blush. I'm a Shelton City Council member.
And Vicki Grover.
Good morning, everyone. Vicki Grover at the City of Bremerton.
Did I miss anybody?
Possibly me. I had to step away for a moment.
Oh yeah, there you are.
To Port Orchard Mayor.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Does that look like a quorum to you, Thera? It's a complicated quorum thing that I still haven't fully understood.
Yeah, we have a complicated formula, but we have a solid quorum today.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody.
Anything else before we jump into the meat of our meeting? Is there anything you wanted to add, Zach, or anybody else wanted to do parting shots?
I do. I want to thank Zach a lot for coming and to let Representative Simmons know we appreciate that she prioritized this and had you join us. And I hope that we will, like in the later part of our agenda, let's talk about what we should do in Olympia this year to see if we can gather more troops to understand what our work is. But Zach, hopefully you can see what a broad range of public servants and elected officials this group represents, and it's um, for Tara's area, the Hood Canal Bridge and the State Route 104 are like probably the key issues that the group is tackling.
Thanks for that. And, Christine, just shout out when you want to talk about Olympia at the end, in case I forget. All right. Well, if everybody's okay, are we okay just going in early on our timeline? We thought the discussion would last a little longer there, but I don't think anybody's going to be upset to.
And that means Zach can gracefully leave and nobody will
Yeah,
judge.
right. Zach, we won't note your absence there if you need to sneak out. But thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. We all do. And anybody listening to this later, thank you to you for listening to this. All right. So our first item of business is to approve the agenda, of course. Does anybody would like to make a motion? I always forget how we do that in this meeting.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
2 seconds, but we'll take Christine. All right. Anybody opposed to this? Please speak up now. Hearing nothing, that passes. And we'll do the forum debrief right now. It's a good chance to talk about it. I do want to point out that the wizard behind the curtain here is Thera.
Can
At least for my. Go ahead.
Before we go on, could I just could we do the consent calendar too? There's a couple of action items.
Sorry.
Yeah, just approving those things. We do it as a separate.
Sorry.
No worries. No,
together there. Yeah, the consent calendar. Anybody would like to make a motion there to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Anybody opposed? Hearing no opposition, that passes. All right. Thanks. It's in the proper order here now. A little debrief here, and yeah. Anyway, I really want to thank Thera there, and I'm not sure what happened with Gary there, but I just read the words verbatim, and I thought they made a lot of sense. That's the first time reading through that part, so I was like, great. So thank you for all that information. Anybody have any thoughts? I mean, we would have more thoughts if we heard more from the representatives, but we didn't get
would
that.
this be a time to speak to Christine's point about about upcoming session and how you all want to engage further throughout, going forwards?
Yeah, let's do that. Hey, Christine, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I had a thought, and I feel like I said this last year when we did this. My recollection, and there can see from our, from minutes over the years, my recollection is that it's always just a couple of legislators that come to these online. And we used to do a meeting in Olympia that was like a box lunch during the lunch hour, and legislators would wander in. But I also remember it was only less than a handful of members that would come through. And Tim Sheldon was just like reliable. He always came to them. And so I was thinking that maybe I think we should do one. We don't all need to go. But I think we should do an invitation that is representative of the people. So it'd be like an invitation from somebody from two people from Jefferson, two from Kitsap, two from Mason, two from Clallam, like on letterhead, where we specifically invite them to come join us for lunch. We provide the lunch for a brief presentation beginning at whatever 12:10. But and I'm happy to talk through the format of this, but I think that we should take the time up front to find out when like 3 key members of the House and Senate Transportation Committees can join us, and then build it out, invite everybody else, but really focus on working with the LAs of those guys, because then it'll get on their calendar. and we'll have at least 3 people from transportation show up, and hopefully others will come because they're in the area, they don't have a meeting, etc. So I'm happy to brainstorm with whoever wants to lead on that, how to structure it so that we can have a broader audience for this when they're all in person.
I think that's a great idea. And I was really kind of surprised when I saw it on the agenda, because I think that's what I'm used to seeing, is that, hey, we're all going to Olympia and we're all going to have lunch with some people and see if we can't get our issues in front of them.
Yeah, but we've always done this, right? Kind of, at least in the last few years, online.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years now, and that's the case. We've been doing it. And frankly, I'm appalled that we got no representatives. None. And to me, that's unconscionable.
Mm-hmm.
We as members should be talking to our representatives and personally inviting them, if nothing else. Now, I like the idea of the letterhead and invite and doing it. That's fine. But I think we personally need to do that as well.
I think it needs a more personal touch than just an email invitation, and then they decide whether they feel like doing it or not.
I would totally agree with that, and I would certainly be willing to help wherever I can. I will say that I'm working now to try to set up a 10-15 minute virtual meeting with both Chair Fye of the House Transportation and Senator Leas of the Senate Transportation, so that we can kind of brief them as well on this issue of funding, in particular for the RTPOs. I think one of the issues that I've got to work with there on is, with that meeting, I think it would be beneficial to also have representation from the other RTPOs. So it's not just the PRTPO that is begging for more money. So there's a bit of a coordinated effort on trying to find time for the chairs, and I'm planning on doing it separately, not trying to do one meeting with both chairs, because I don't want to put them in a competing mode, if you will. And then bringing in the other RTPOs to help strengthen the message. So, but I agree with Commissioner Rolfes, and I'd be happy to help out wherever I can.
Great, Lindsay.
Yeah, I think at our last subcommittee strategy meeting, we thought that getting the chair's support was key for transportation in both chambers. And so if those are the 2 key participants, then we should work on scheduling a time in person in Olympia with them. And if there's any other people, Christine, that you're thinking about that should be on the short list of must be there, and we should schedule around their schedules, I'm happy to help as well.
Do we have, is this something that one of our offices should take the lead on, or is this something that you do, Tara?
I can help with scheduling. I'll be really honest. It's when they receive an email from me inviting them to participate, it's not the same as hearing from you all. You know, it's just the reality.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I can do so much, but at a certain point, I'm just a contractor carrying out staff functions, and I just simply don't have the same clout as policymakers.
And I wanted to comment one thing on, Lindsay, your comment about meeting the chairs in Olympia. My thought was trying to do a virtual, because it's so much less of a time commitment for them. And right now they're obviously pretty busy with the upcoming session. So that was going to be my approach, was to try to do it virtually. And hopefully by doing it virtually, we can get a lot more participation from the other RTPOs, at least to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I thought next step was, John, you were doing one-on-ones with them And then we were going to circle back on next strategy. I think I heard Christine say that we should try and do kind of a box lunch event in Olympia. So I might have confused those two events. I apologize.
Yeah, no, I agree with both, and it's not me one-on-one. The only thing I'm doing is trying to arrange the meeting and reaching out to the various chairs to try to get a time where we can get them to come where there's other folks. And I'm kind of like Vera. I think it's better that we have a broader representation of all the RTPOs than simply me as a staff person or just the PRTPO. That's the goal.
I and then I do so I can offer that I can ask if our legislative person can help set up the lunch and work with you there. I have to get that approved by my team on Monday. But we have a staff person who's very good at this kind of thing. I could check in on that.
I think
I
it's
can work with my
incumbent upon.
legislative person as well. Dylan Doty is our lobbyist, and I'm sure he can help us organize something too.
Yeah.
I think it's incumbent upon all of us as individuals to talk to our representatives. They live in our community. They're our friends in many cases, and it has a much more direct effect on the legislator when you are talking to them and you're not a contractor or you're not an employee. You are elected as well as they are. So I think that each one of us needs to step up and call our own legislators, whether they're on the transportation committee or not. You just need to talk to them and let them know where we are.
The other thing I think we should do if we're serious about this regional PRTPO money, I don't know if it's in the governor's transportation budget, but traditionally the legislature holds public hearings on the governor's budgets the first week of session. And we should have as many people as possible testify and support, like if it's in the budget, we support it. If it's not in the budget, the governor forgot to do this. And you can't have too many people. Like Mark, the chairs will cut us off. They'll be like, yeah, we know you want that. Who else is here for that? And we all raise our hands. But like peppering them with it, if we don't show up, we don't have a chance. So we have to have people show up. I don't know if they're still doing online testifying or not, but we should have that organized too, so we know when the hearing is and have this as an agenda to talk about.
Yeah.
We have a couple weeks to organize that.
Yeah. I'm in.
It's easy testimony. Like you do not need to take a minute. You just say, hey, we asked for $80,000 or whatever we asked for. It's not in here. We want it. We need it, or we will dissolve.
Yeah.
The most effective thing is when people all wear the same color t-shirt and they sit together. We don't have to go that far.
I can say it is not in the governor's budget. So that we know then going into it what our talking points would be.
Okay. Well, let's do we still have a legislative steering committee?
That can come right out of this meeting. I mean, I've still got all of you on my little distribution list, so I could follow up with all of you afterwards.
Okay. We might need to schedule, if you guys don't mind, schedule a quick meeting after the holidays.
Yeah, certainly. Anybody else want to weigh in here? I mean, I would also say like just the amount of districts and agencies represented here seems like an opportunity for, our representatives. So yeah, and it sounds like that personal touch. I didn't reach out to anybody this time, and I should have. Should have leaned on Theringer. At least he's just down the street.
I can also to both of the discussions about testifying during the public hearing on the governor's budget, as well as the meeting that John is the meetings that John is setting up with Representative Fye and Senator Leas, we do have a list of other RTPO representatives from elsewhere in the state who are interested in, this is exactly the kind of, I'm going to say, direction or suggestion or guidance that they would be looking for and looking to respond to. So there is a sort of an informal network of others. And as I've observed before with you all, because of the work that you did as board members, just in researching the issue, at reaching out to all the other RTPO boards to ask for their, their input, their sort of validation of your findings and what you think the next steps are. The PRTPO Executive Board is being seen by other RTPOs around the state as a leader in this effort to secure a more adequate level of baseline funding just to maintain the programs that exist. It's not to grow the programs, it is just to do the work that our TPOs are already tasked with doing by legislation.
Zach had a couple, I didn't know Zach was still on, but he had a couple of comments in the chat for us. What he's seconding that what we're talking about is a good idea.
I think he also liked the coordinated t-shirt colors as well. He put a little heart icon on his thing after you mentioned that. So sounds like that's probably helpful from their side. Looks like Randy Netherlands joined us from Mason County. Welcome. We were just doing a little update on checking in on how to interface with Olympia better. And does anybody else have anything to add to that topic before we move on to the agenda as agreed on? Looks like not, but thanks, Christine, for bringing that up. That's a great segue into the next forward reaching here. So first item on our kind of normal business meeting here, the 2024 Consolidated Grants Review and Ranking Recommendations.
Yeah, this is me. This is an action item for you all. One of your responsibilities that's laid out in state law is to evaluate and rank projects that WashDOT receives through its consolidated grant call for projects. And the recommendation of each RTPO about priorities ends up being a key criterion within the statewide scoring system. So we talked about this previously. Just as a quick reminder, consolidated grants are they're typically directed to public transit agencies, nonprofit providers, and tribal transit agencies to and the funding is meant to support the Human Services Transportation Plan that each region adopts. And so WashDOT received 12 applications in its call for projects. And we reviewed those applications with the Technical Advisory Committee. This year they were the review committee. And it was a great discussion, lots of participation. The applicants were invited to participate and attend the meeting, answer questions, listen to the whole conversation. So nothing's being done and, behind closed doors. It's all, it's just all part of that open discussion. And at the end of the day, after they clarified questions that they had with the various applications and discussed the merits of them, at the end of the day, they tended to side with proposals for operating funds as opposed to capital projects. If they had to sort of settle on one or the other, they felt that the operating fund projects were a bit more important than the capital. And because of the way the state ranking process works, they could only identify 3 projects to be like the A projects. And what they really considered was the coverage of that Clallam Transit and Mason Transit provide with their services, and the TAC members observed that if those programs were not there, there'd be that much more burden on nonprofit providers to pick up the pieces. That what the public transit agencies provide is the backbone that supports all the rest of sort of the connectivity and services. So with that, they settled on the three sort of A projects. So just like school grades, A's are the best, then B's are really good, and C's are not bad, but they don't get quite the same high score. And so as you see in the in your agenda packet, they identified the two Clallam Transit projects and the Mason Transit Dial-A-Lift project as their A projects. And then you see the 6 B scores and then the 3 C scores. And so all three of those scores, all three of those grades confer additional points to those applications. And the one thing I would also call to your attention in the projects that we reviewed this year, we actually had 3 new organizations or entities participating out of the Peninsula region in this process. And that included the Suquamish tribe, as well as the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center, as well as the Lewis Mason Thurston Area Agency on Aging. And the Mason County projects are, in terms of the nonprofit service providers, Mason is in a different region than Clallam, Jefferson, and Kitsap. It's a whole nother story about how the state divvied up those regions for healthcare providers. But that's why you see some things in here that look like, it's like, well, they mentioned Thurston. Well, that's why, because they are serving an area that is not just Mason County, but also Mason, Thurston, and Lewis. So that's, if you're going like, I don't understand why we got a Thurston County project in here. It's not really it's they could use a little help writing grants sometimes, I think. But it's a legit project, and it does serve residents in the Mason County area. So you see those 12 projects arrayed. That is the TAC recommendation for ranking that they're forwarding to you. I'm coming to you today to answer any questions that you might have about those applications as best as I can. And if you have any questions about the ranking, at the end of the day, you can rearrange that ranking. I had provided links to all the project applications. Sorry it was such a giant agenda package, but needed to get you that information. And if you wanted to rearrange it, you can, or you can accept the TAC recommendation. Upon your approval of whatever that ranking order should be, I will complete, there's a sort of a lengthy form that needs to be completed for WashDOT. I will complete that and submit that, and odds are very good that all 12 of these projects will be funded. Just odds are good that they'll all be funded, but still, this is your part of that process and helping to inform the state decision making. So with that, I turn it over to you all for your discussion, questions, and then ultimately your recommendation on project ranking for consolidated grants.
Who has questions or opinions or feelings about this? Don't all come rushing at once. All right, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right. Any opposed? Please speak up. Hearing none, that passes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this next agenda item is also an action item, and it's related to the action that you just took. As I mentioned earlier, these projects are intended to support the Human Services Transportation Plan. And one way that PRTPO demonstrates to the state that these projects are consistent with and supportive of that plan is you all amend these projects into Appendix D of the Human Services Transportation Plans, so that it always includes the most current list of projects recommended by the board for funding. And so this next agenda item is just to ask for your approval of Resolution 2024, which would amend the Human Services Transportation Plan to include these projects. We did have, consistent with our procedures, we had a public notice for project review before they go into the Human Services Transportation Plan, asking the public, is there any reason that any of these projects are not consistent with and should not be included in the Human Services Transportation Plan? And we got no comments on that as of the close of the comment period on December 18th about amending the Human Services Transportation Plan. So it's, I think, fairly simple, but just looking any questions you might have, and then I'd be looking for a recommendation to approve that resolution 05-2024.
Everybody's pretty happy with how it's going, looks like. Anybody like to approve 05-2024 or move to approve?
I move to approve. Somebody else got to make
I,
a motion.
I was trying to get there.
Okay.
Who's taking the second there? Brenda, are you doing second?
I'll take the second.
Great.
Thanks,
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other further discussion? Anyone opposed? Speak up. Hearing nothing, that's approved. All right, so moving on to the next item. The 2025 Legal Services Agreement and next steps. It's a discussion item, no action required.
No, this is, as you all know, as you were briefed earlier, I think back in October, Kitsap County Prosecutor's Office has provided legal services to PRTPO through the transition to an independent organization and for the last 5 years. Because of budget cutbacks at the county, they are unable to offer outside contracts, for support services in 2025. So that leaves PRTPO in a position of needing legal services support. You don't need it a lot, but it's nice to have that sort of over the shoulder every once in a while to help us when we, just need to make sure we're doing things right. At the October meeting, sort of a notice went out to all of you in that discussion when we met in person, and we did get a taker. So Port Angeles, Bill Bloor with the city's prosecutor contacted me, and they are willing to take this on. Their fee will be comparable to what Kitsap County had charged. And they've got the previous contract, and they're developing their own contract language, and we expect to bring that to the board for the first read in February. So that is good news. John had also offered to use Kitsap Transit's external services, but they tend to be a little bit more affordable if we have an in-house, and only a few agencies have that in-house, but Port Angeles does, and they stepped up and offered to do that service for PRTPO. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, and Lindsay might know more about it than I do, but that's really good news for the agency.
This is the second regional transportation thing Port Angeles has taken the lead on. So thank you guys for doing that. This and the RAISE grant, which is no small feat, that RAISE grant, managing all those federal contracts with all of us. Thank you.
Indeed. This was good news to see this kind of no gap in the process here. Marty Allen?
Yeah, I just want to say that's good news that I can hear that, and I want to say thank you too for the support. That's awesome. Thank you.
I also want to point out the prosecutor is a separately elected countywide official. It is not the county commissioner's decision to stop providing the service. So just want to put that out there.
Good clarification.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next item? Looks like it. Okay. So Sorry.
Okay, the next item is the RTPO, the increase in the RTPO base funding. This is, if I'd been a little bit smarter, well, we needed to put the action items up front, but this really segues off of the earlier conversation. Based on what we heard from a small working group that included several of you, as well as other RTPO representatives back in late October, what we heard is that some sort of clear, concise talking points would be needed to help educate legislators about how inadequate the funding is, why it matters, what's lost if you can't afford staff to do work for you. And so working with some other RTPO staff, we developed a one-pager, which is included in your agenda packet of talking points. It is that one-pager is very close, I think, to sort of the final language. I've got in the very last paragraph of that one-pager, I've been notified I have a project code wrong, so we've changed it for the version that's online. What we've done is created, and I'll just take a second to share my screen with you again. Let's see, I've got too many things up for two screens. Let me share this here. We created on the PRTPO website, hopefully you're seeing this documents page. Oh, here we go. Share. Okay. Hopefully you're seeing this documents page. So if somebody goes to the PRTPO website, to the documents page, under Transportation Outlook, where we always have that legislative folio, it's up there this year. There's also funding to maintain RTPO planning. And again, this is maintenance funding. This is not to grow the program. That is really important going into this next session. You'll keep hearing that emphasis. This is to maintain the existing programs. So we have this on the website. This is language out of your resolution that you approved in October. And then we also have information, so that just sort of sums it up. This is the effect of this funding increase if it were to pass. And then underneath here, for anybody who comes to visit the site, they'll get to see sort of what is the, what is the issue sort of in a nutshell. And then from here, they can click on, if they're not sure, what is the state law? What is it that RTPOs are required to do? They can click here and get all that information and take a look and see what all it is that we are required to do with the funding that we receive. But most of the materials up here are really related to PRTPO's actions, what you all have authorized and approved, as well as that statewide joint letter that was put forward by the statewide MPO RTPO coordinating group chair and vice chair. And so those materials are up here. So again, anybody can come reference it. To be really candid, I think for some, especially for the rural RTPOs who have less staff than you have, this may be something helpful to help, that they can direct their own legislators to, because they won't have the capacity in-house to put, public information out like this about the issue and all. So, but this is easily accessible from the website. And then I'll just share with you also on the homepage, we've put a notice up there that PRTPO does support this statewide effort. And then always from the homepage, you can link to the Transportation Outlook or, other notices, but I wanted to call that to your attention as well. So I'll quit sharing. I wanted to put that out there, share that with you, so you know that that's available to you as a resource if you need it for any reason. And yeah, and I guess I would be looking to you to see if you've got any questions, if there's anything that you have thoughts about building on the earlier conversation about next steps and how to engage with legislators as you all meet with them to inform them, help them understand the importance of this and what the next steps are. In that one-page handout, I will just that last paragraph, and I will send to you the final updated version of this, that where it says that very last paragraph is probably about half of that paragraph is the substance of a budget proviso request. So as you all are talking with legislators, if they say, well, how would we actually do that? There's the language. The one thing that I've changed on it now is that the program is, it's T6 is the RTPO funding program that this would go into, not T1 as I had indicated, but the correct version is online, and happily send it to anybody as well. What we understand is, as John gets these meetings set, if we have 15 minutes, that'll be the max. I mean, it may even be less than that. So the need to be able to go in, somebody from Island RTPO is working with Representative Paul's, the legislative aide, and so she's been giving advice for the kind of information, the format, or I'm going to say the size of the sound bites that legislators are really going to have time to absorb and process. And Christine, with your background, I think that you will also have really good insights. So whatever suggestions you all might have today for how this communication piece could be more effective, I'd welcome that, and we'll make those changes and make sure that's in everybody's hands as we get ready, for you all to meet with legislators. And that's, I think, my bit, just respond to you.
I think that we should also condense this into 4 sentences that everybody can read when they testify the second week of January. Because if everybody says the same thing, I'm from Island County, da 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 da. I'm from Island County, da 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 da. They'll hear it. It's such a small amount of money. They will appropriate this just to get us to not come back.
Especially with our t-shirts.
Maybe we need hats.
Hats might be better, yeah.
Christine, I just love your insight to this.
I don't know if I'm right. I'm just throwing stuff out.
We'll only go with it.
I think you might have some knowledge the rest of us don't have.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add anything to this discussion? Nothing there. Well, thanks for putting this together, though.
Yeah, I do. I just sent an email to our staff to see if I could requisition our staff person for a small amount of time early in session on this. I think we need a plan. It doesn't have to take a long time, but just an outline for, step 1, step 2, step 3. To get this, to get us all feeling comfortable with the work. We're gonna have to put some work into it, but it doesn't have to be that much. It doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah.
And was there general agreement that, because if so, I can go ahead after today's meeting and reach back out to the legislative work group. And I'm going to sort of call that the RTPO, that RTPO funding work group that, a number of you had really rolled up your sleeves and met 3 times back in the spring to dig into, just to understand, is this really a problem, or is this just, planners, they never have enough money, but no, and then you all validated that, no, this is an issue, and it's not just for PRTPO. So I could reconvene that group and work through you all this sort of step 1, 2, 3, and then we could share that with the full board. Does that sound workable to you all? And we'll keep it, we don't have a choice. We've got to move fast and be nimble, and that may be as much email coordination as in-person meeting, but okay.
And I do think that the 2 chairs, if they're not going to consider this, what is it, $5 million? If they're not going to consider it, which it's their purview they'll tell you. They'll just say, hey, we're not going to do this. We don't have any money, we're blah, blah, blah. And then we just know, and we can focus on other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great. Anybody else want to weigh in? Great. Well, I was expecting, that's about when we were going to start all these agenda items. So we're way ahead here. But we have a member of the public with us, and we have a public comment period. So it's a great chance well, at least he was. John Worthington, yeah, I see he's still there. Any interest in making a public comment? As long as we're all here.
John Worthington Squim. I'm going to give you reasons to and reasons not to continue on. The reason to continue on is that you have a battle of putting complete streets on your freight corridor, and it's just begun. It started on 104, and that was an awful decision. It should have come with a passing lane, so when a truck comes out of that terribly slow speed of 15 miles an hour and heads straight up a hill. WSDOT, are you listening? How you managed to put that in without a passing lane up that hill and cause an instant 5 mile long snake of cars that continues all the way probably to Forks. That's your reason to stick together, to actually, Pugitropolis doesn't put its complete streets on I-5. And so what you have is just basically an encroachment of complete streets. You're not Pugitropolis. You have the transit agencies here, but you don't have that housing. You don't have that Parsons Brinkerhoff transit-oriented community thing going on. And they're set up, Puget Sound Regional Council over everybody in Pugitropolis, they're set up for that model. So if you're just trying to come over here and live under that standard, it's not worth continuing. But if you're interested in confronting head on the battle of where to put complete streets, which is obviously on the old Olympic Highway because that's the old corridor. Like in Pugitropolis, they put their complete streets on 99. That all makes sense. But when they come here and they try to put it on a freight corridor, that just doesn't make any sense at all. And if you're in Forks, boy, that's just, it's torture, added time. And my graph behind me, and I apologize if it makes folks mad, but we get stuff more what we need from a ship and a truck than we do anywhere. So to have a complete streets corridor starting from 104 all the way to the coast, that's just an awful idea. And fortunately for you guys, there's a change in the regime coming up where the leveraging is going to tilt the other way now. Whereas before, the leveraging was for the transit-oriented communities and the Pugitropolis model, they're not going to be so hesitant, I don't think, to give you money to create that traditional operational freight corridor. Now I'm talking about 104 and 3. I understand the way around the Hood Ford and all that. That might not ever be a place where you can have both a complete streets and a freight corridor. But we've got too many people living there. You got to nip this complete streets roundabout thing in the bud. And look at the viewpoint in Port Angeles where they actually have an over and under. And that's the minimum of what we should have on that road is an over and under like that, not a 15-mile-an-hour roundabout. And I hope that you do stick around to join that fight. I think complete streets, yes, it's a law. It's a law where you can put in a roundabout on your freight corridor. And it was a bad idea. It was bad legislation. It was good legislation for Pugitropolis if they're going to use Highway 99, but it's a bad policy if you're going to try to turn your freight corridor into a complete street corridor.
John, fortunately you did get through to WSDOT here because George Messier is on the line listening in too. So you got all us and you got him too. So that's effective. Thanks for that. It's good input. I don't know enough about the freight factors here, so that's valuable.
I think you're on mute, Chair.
Oh, I just muted myself. Sorry. Anybody else from the public that is?
We don't have anybody in person at KT, at Kitsap Transit at the moment.
Thanks, Ed. Okay. Well, then I think that's all for us. Any PRTPO member updates? Heard a couple kind of randomly, but any more ones you want to share with all of us? Last chance this year.
I want to just kind of echo John's comments. The complete streets make sense for 104, like on the Kitsap County side where we have urban and Lammerd, we call them, but where we do have residences and interest in trails and bike lanes and stuff. But maybe not so for other parts of the highway system. And so I wonder if that is something that we need to look at to get more nuanced, because if we're being required to do complete streets in the most rural areas, it's going to cause the prices to go up. So it's just something, I don't know how much it's new. I remember this when it was being developed, but I don't know how it's being implemented. And it would be a shame if some of our state highway projects were getting dinged because we weren't doing complete streets. And if we do complete streets, is it more expensive? So something for us to maybe take a look at.
Yeah, that's a good point. Marty Allen?
Yeah, I just wanted to share something real quick. And I don't really have nothing to do with anything here, but it does have to do with transportation. There was a project that I had done through Safe Routes to School project through WSDOT local programs. And this was the first time I ever did anything like that with that kind of funding. And I did a JC agreement with the regular WSDOT. I didn't even know there was well, I know the local programs, but everything was totally separate from the regular WSDOT, they said. And I was getting billed. I'm still getting billed for that project that closed quite a while back. And I found out that you have to get in contact with development services in the regular WSDOT. I just wanted to share that in case anybody ever does a Safe Routes to School project and they do a JC agreement also. So I just wanted to share that with everybody in case anybody ever runs into that. You have to let them know that the project's closed too, so you don't keep getting billed for a year later.
Great. Thanks, Marty.
Everybody have a good holiday.
All right, thanks. All right, Mike French.
Yeah, just if you wanted an example of that complete streets in a rural area, Clallam County has a project that WashDOT is, it's a WashDOT project in Clallam County where they're just doing pavement preservation on US Highway 101. And because of the costs that they're assuming they will incur, that triggered the complete streets review. And so that's, I think, something that was surprising to a lot of folks in Clallam County, because again, this was just pavement preservation. But that is now triggering, things like roundabout plans for certain intersections, which on some intersections I feel are actually very appropriate. And there's other sections, there's one intersection in particular where it's outside of an urban growth area. We already have, I think, a fairly complicated intersection that takes a lot of safety improvements into effect. And WashDOT had said, well, maybe a roundabout is appropriate here. But of course, putting a roundabout outside of a growth area creates a target for development. And I feel like that's fairly inappropriate for that specific place. So anyway, if people are curious about that, there's plenty to talk about there. And WashDOT certainly can share their perspective, which I think WashDOT has been doing what they're supposed to do. I'm not upset at WashDOT about this, but because of the cost of that just simple pavement preservation project, it triggered complete streets.
Yeah, and now we have George here from WashDOT to possibly comment on that. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, it took me like 5 minutes to find out how to raise my hand, so I'll talk to him later.
You weren't trying to avoid John's.
So thanks for all the comments. I'm complete streets all the time. It feels like in kind of explaining it. And there's a great link that was added to the chat, which gives a little bit of background on the legislation. This is not something WashDOT dreamed up. This is something our elected officials said is important to the state, and WashDOT, you have to implement it. So Commissioner Rolfs, in terms of your question about rural areas, so we don't put complete streets in rural areas. Every project that passes actually a very low dollar threshold of 500,000 or more has to go through a screening process. So we look at whether a project is in a population center. It's defined, it's not an urban growth area. It's a population center as defined by the US Census Bureau. And then we look at if there's a documented gap within an adopted plan that says there's an active transportation gap, or if there is a tribal nexus, we look particularly at that. And there's a few other criteria too. So a lot of projects end up screening as complete streets doesn't apply. And I was given a whole bunch of safety projects and preservation projects in the PRTPO region that will be going forward in the next few years where complete streets does not apply. And we'll be going just advancing straight through. It's actually a minority of projects in the PRTPO region where it does apply. There are several on SR 305 in and near Bainbridge Island where we're looking at complete streets features. Now, in the case of US 101, that's kind of a unique one. We're struggling with very long corridors where we're doing pavements over multiple miles and where portions of the corridor are in a population center and portions of the corridor are outside the population center. We're in the process of refining our screening process to maybe delineate that a little bit better. But a great thing about the US 101, and the example I like, is we knew we had to apply complete streets. And we came up with some initial concepts. And then we sat down with everybody and said what makes sense and what doesn't. And where we ended up was quite a bit different than where it started. And I think we ended up with a solution that maybe everybody wasn't like 100% pleased with, didn't meet everybody's needs, but everybody could move forward and accept. And there's a long-term development plan on it. So we have some initial things that we're implementing now that work, within the budget parameters available, and there are many more items that are deferred that will get rolled out over the longer term. So, the key thing is this is not universal. Put complete streets on every road in the state. We're getting targeted, and we're getting more targeted as we go along and as we learn more about it. And if we have this discussion 2 years from now, it's going to be very different than our discussion today and your experience with it. But my closing comment is we will never compromise on safety for all vulnerable road users and all users of the transportation system. It is our preservation and safety are our top two priorities with WashDOT, and we make no apologies about that.
Appreciate that, George. And John Worthington, just before you speak, I just want to, normally we don't usually get much public comment, so this is great to have you on here, but try to keep it a little brief here. And if you have a follow-up with George or anybody else, please take us up on that as well. Go ahead, John.
Just with George, real quick, a turn lane there would make sense. It's just not turn lane, a passing lane. At the, I understand you need to safely merge, and the pedestrian traffic there is just laughable. I don't think that that's consideration, but just having a passing lane up that hill would have made it work, and it shouldn't have been open without one. If you had to drive it, or if commercial trucks, that's not really good for commercial trucks. It seems like WSDOT's allergic. Now, I've listened to the conversations. It seems like you're allergic to overpasses. And when it came time to get one, and they threw out the word earthquake, and they said, well, it's, earthquake is dangerous. So it really needed an overpass. And if you're going to do something there, it should have been more along the lines of what we have in close to Port Angeles at the viewpoint of Four Seasons, where there's a legitimate over and under, and that looks as safe as anything. Right now, you have a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit for commercial trucks. A lot of them come, and it just doesn't look like it was wise planning. I would alter that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Brenda.
I just wanted to say thank you for the explanation. And then I just had a question about the streets, whether or not this program, is it just another gate for you to review what the project is, or does it always come with roundabouts? Can you kind of give me a little bit more on that?
That does it. No, I would say that not complete streets. That being said, there are other Complete Streets is one of many programs that WashDOT does. So we have different programs, and actually this came up in Bainbridge Island. Everyone was kind of surprised that a roundabout came up unexpectedly. But we have a constant process of evaluating crash data as one example. We have other programs that constantly evaluate the conditions of bridges and the conditions of pavement. So projects are being generated from many different sources. Some of those other processes may recommend a roundabout, particularly if they come through our safety program. And you know, we are now in the midst of developing a roundabout first policy and implementing a roundabout first policy throughout WashDOT. So it will become the default position that we will begin with a roundabout unless conditions at a particular location suggest a different type of solution when it comes about for a safety reason. So Brenda, you'll see more and more roundabouts that come about through our safety program. On Complete Streets, there'll be some that come about. We like roundabouts. They're just kind of costly. And we're going to be very surgical about where we build them initially as part of a Complete Streets application. So there has to be some pretty strongly demonstrated crash history at a location for us to go through the cost of adding a roundabout as a Complete Street feature. It does happen.
Yeah, and I don't want to take us too far off of what we were talking about, but I guess I'll ask the next question relating to bikers and pedestrians. You know, I know the one that's being built on High School Road is an expensive one already. And everyone is kind of looking at what happened in Paulsbo and hoping that we can get some sort of, you know, safety for the pedestrians and the bikers. I know we won't be able to do an underpass or an overpass, but I'm just hoping that we're thinking about that as a priority when we put in this roundabout.
Yeah, and Paulsbo is a case where that came about and was designed before we have what we call our Complete Streets pre-design process. So we have a process now where we engage the community. We're going to sit down with the city, sit down with the local residents, kind of roll things out, hear all the suggestions. We've already met with some of I forgot the name of the bicycle groups that really has some research and some very specific suggestions of design features. So we're incorporating all those different viewpoints. We have a much more public process now than we had even 2 years ago.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, anybody else have any updates? We're losing our quorum here, I think. But it's been actually good to hear this update there. Okay, well, then I will adjourn this meeting of the PRTPO 20th of December 2024, last one of the year.
Yeah.
So not to be too corny, but I'll see you all next year and happy holidays. All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, guys.
Christmas.
Thank you, you too.